Sorry for the glare on my glasses. I think I can see all right without them for this. So Shavua Tov, everyone. I'm going to switch to gallery view so I can see as many of you as possible. It's wonderful to be together. It's been a while since we've gathered for a town hall connection. It's remarkable how rare it is to have even 20 or 30 of us in person in a space together, which we are blessed to be able to do on Shabbatot. For those who are able to join us for Tefillah, and those in-person connections make such a difference. But to gather on Zoom as well, just to look across the screen and see each other's faces, many whom we see regularly on Zoom, and some folks who I don't get to see as often. I'm delighted to see your faces, see your names on the screen. Really makes a difference. And I'm just reflecting for a moment that, as we all are aware and have been thinking about, that we're so close to the 1 year mark. Purim in so many ways represents the sort of 1 year anniversary of our contending with COVID, with its terrible effects of loss of all kinds, loss of life, loss of job or stability, loss of the opportunities to connect in the ways that we are accustomed to, loss of so many parts of our shul life that are so natural and so important to us. And in its wake, with all of that loss, as we continue to try to hold that, process that, be there for each other, has been such an incredible proliferation of community support and togetherness in new and different ways. I want to, of course, acknowledge our rabbinic team and our entire Bayit staff. I know Richard is here, Yael is here, in addition to our rabbinic team. And each of them has worked so around the clock. And while there have been slightly quieter moments, by and large, it's been a time of incredible effort. Yael answering phones around the clock as we've been dealing with all kinds of ways of keeping everyone connected and included, and so many more. Richard managing all the back end of our enrollments and making our programs together with Yael possible. And of course, to each of our rabbinic team members who are trying our hardest to be there for each of you however we can and put new initiatives and different kinds of ways to connect on the table. So I want to thank all of them. I want to thank Gillian, our president, for continuing to keep us steady, stable, and on top of all of the initiatives and programs that we want to try to continue to move forward in these days and to keep us mission focused. And really, I want to thank our incredible volunteers. I see many of them on this Zoom, those who spend hours and hours, many on a daily basis, making sure we're connecting to each other, offering spiritual, physical support. We've gone through so many iterations of volunteer tasks, and of late, of course, our vaccine team, which is such a wonderful example of what we learned about in the beginning of this week's parasha, Yitro's wisdom to Moshe, that you can't do it alone. You step up and envision something and then bring in all kinds of support of partners to make it happen. And a few leaders stepped up in the very beginning of our vaccine volunteer system. And now we have so many people who've made sure that as each new group has become eligible to be vaccinated, that we've done our best to help reach out, find out who needs, help set up appointments. It's been in many ways a partnership with SAR's Volunteer Corps, and we're grateful to them. And I want to particularly also thank those who in the last few days have helped us pivot to try to think about those who are extended members of our community, frontline workers, those who work in restaurants and other food establishments, who may not be members of our Bayit, but who truly are a part of the fabric of our Bayit and our Riverdale community, to reach out and try to help them make sure that they have vaccines as well. We have many committees that have been hard at work in this time. And of course, I want to thank our Social Action Committee, our Green Team in so many ways, all of our different volunteers. We continue to provide Friday night meals to dozens through a network of volunteers who deliver and who call to check in. We continue to check in on so many in our community. And we've been blessed to see more people showing up in person slowly but surely. We've brought our Tat Shabbat back in recent months. It's been wonderful to see little children I want to thank our youth director, Yali Zulansky-Weiss, who's helping move our youth programming forward, including envisioning some Purim programming virtual and as conditions will permit in person. And we're trying to bring some more of our youth programming in some form or another back online in these weeks. So just a quick survey, really by way of words of thank you. What we want to do in the time that we have together tonight, I first want to turn it over to Dr. Sheryl Haut, a member of our medical advisory committee, together with Dr. Dale Nordenberg. We've been blessed to have Atara Gorsetman serve over recent months with us, and Ahuva Jacobowitz, who's completing her PhD in epidemiology, who've been a regular source of check-in, wisdom, guidance, and counsel as we've managed and tried to manage keeping the Bayit a safe, accessible place to gather when we can, where and how we can, primarily for tefillot in this time. And as we've had a few, hopefully very short-term minor tweaks to our protocols just starting last week, we wanted this to be an opportunity also to check in, give a little bit of explanation there. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Sheryl to share a little bit of a summary where we've been in the last number of months in terms of COVID, vaccination, and to touch on where we are and how it impacts our Bayit today. Then I'll pick back up. We'll pause for questions there. Feel free to put questions in the chat, which we'll collect and ask right when she's done. And then we'll shift from there. I want to touch briefly on a few points that pertain to Purim, a little drop about Pesach. I know that seems far away, but it's coming closer. And just touch on our programming and volunteer opportunities looking ahead. So again, feel free to pop questions in the chat at any point. And I'm going to turn it over to Sheryl.
Thank you, Stephen. I apologize.
We don't hear you too well yet, Sheryl.
It's the. Is this better?
To me, you still sound a little quiet and muffled.
Maybe that microphone is through my computer. Is this better now?
Yes, much better.
Okay, yeah.
You're on.
So it seems to me like forever since the last time I spoke to you. I can't even, figure it out. But I feel like it was at the, early during the first surge, and I don't have much of what we talked about then. You're all completely aware of what has happened. So I just want to bring you up to date about numbers in the Bronx now. And again, I reflect my experience from Montefiore, which may not represent Riverdale completely, but certainly represents the Bronx as a whole. And I think we can't forget that as the numbers in Manhattan and elsewhere in New York go down, we're still lagging behind in the Bronx. So right as of today, the numbers that I get every day from the hospital, the positivity rate in the Bronx as a whole is 6.39. So it's down from, the height a few weeks ago. But if you think about this compared to the summer where we all, enjoyed and felt much more confident that the population levels were very, very low, this is, still very high. In Westchester, the number is 5.23, so that's come down. For a long time, Westchester was higher than the Bronx, but they've come down. And New York State as an entirety is 4.3. So definitely the numbers overall have been going down after a recent peak. Still much, much higher than they were months ago. And the reasons for that, everyone wants to know why. Is it the new variants? Is it what happened, from the holidays? And I think that the general understanding is that starting from Thanksgiving, which gave a bump, and this was before the new variants were here, but there was just definitely a bump related to travel and families being together, et cetera. And then that took off again from Christmas and New Year's, really peaking in January. So I think everyone feels that the peak that we just are getting over is not the new variant, but it is unclear where this is going to go now, because we do know that these new variants that are starting to pop up in the US and in New York, as we know, are more contagious, more quickly contagious, not more serious in terms of the severity of the COVID that you develop, but it's more serious as a public health issue because it spreads faster. And I think we're really at the cusp of seeing what's going to happen now, because either the numbers countrywide and statewide are going to go down after these holiday peaks. Hopefully the Super Bowl doesn't add to this. Now we worry about that. But we should be, if not for the new variants, we really should be seeing a decrease now. If the new variants do become active, then it may go up again. So I would say that we don't know. There's a lot of reason to be optimistic right now, as the numbers do tend to have turned around. And the hospitals in Manhattan are definitely seeing fewer patients, fewer hospitalizations. The ICU cases, which had really gone to levels that we had not seen since the original surge, are starting to reduce. But as an example, in Montefiore, we had to open up 2 new COVID ICUs, and we haven't been able to close those yet. So we're still in a point where everybody has to be very, very vigilant. And it leads to the discussion of masks. And it almost makes me laugh, because a year ago, I remember having the first town hall, and the question came up about masks. And the CDC had said at that time, you don't need to wear a mask. And we were having a panel, and I remember saying, look, it doesn't hurt to wear a mask. I just don't see why not, even if the CDC isn't saying it. And that characterizes so much of this pandemic, which is you sometimes have to make these decisions based on what makes sense before you get official recommendations. And so I'm going to say again about the masks. Now there's a lot of discussion, I'm sure you've seen in magazines and newspapers, about double masking or upping your level of masking. And I think it's a good idea. I think there's really no downside. And to the extent that we might see these new, more aggressive variants, then the better masked you are, the better protected you are. And so if you look, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal that I just saw today. I mean, there's a lot more discussion about it, whether to double mask. There's a lot of recommendations about wearing a surgical mask and then a cloth mask on top of it. And also about testing to see if the masks are good enough. And one recommendation was just to see if your glasses fog up, then the mask isn't well sealed enough. And it probably has been protective enough until now, but if we're going to deal with more contagious strains, then we should be better masked. So you can look it up, and maybe the shul can put together something and send it out. But there were some sources for reliable K95s, because a lot of the K95s that come from China are not reliable. But if you can get reliable K95s, they're not expensive, and they are really recommended. I actually bought some from the New York Times, had some links of reliable companies that it came through Office Depot, and I got some for us at home. And then they're saying, if not for that, the masks, the double layers that have a filter, but you have to worry about changing the filter for those, or to wear surgical masks with a cloth mask over it. But whatever it is, I think it's time to, I would just say, again, we don't have the evidence for it. Let's be ahead of the evidence and just, up our vigilance with masking. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of vaccination and how will that impact on everything. And before we get to that, I do want to say that, as Rev. Stevens said, there were some additional precautions that were taken at the Bayit over the last 2 weeks, and that was from a lot of discussions on our medical committee. And it wasn't, as you know, it was not state mandated. The state did not change their recommendations. In fact, maybe the state is relaxing them, but we were seeing increasing numbers in our own community, in the schools, and it was an agreement that better to be extra safe than even take a little bit of a chance with people's health. And so for a short period of time, there's additional distancing, which had to change some of the numbers for the minyanim, and also additional recommendations about being more rigorous with masking. If the numbers go down in a week, we meet all the time, and we're ready to pull back. Also regards to touch Shabbat and all, the issue of kids. Nobody wants to be extra restrictive. We just really don't want to be caught, behind. Once you can't catch up if you've done unsafe practices. So that's where that came from. And then just a few minutes about vaccines. Hopefully many people on this town hall have received the vaccines, and you all, I hope, saw that what Governor Cuomo released, I think it was right before Shabbat, that from February 15th, the next level of people will be eligible. And that's going to include a lot of people, because look at the list. Includes many medical conditions, what we think of as the comorbidities that make your risk a little bit higher. What I quickly looked to see if you could already make appointments now. I see Yanina's shaking her head. That's exactly right. You can't make appointments now for February 15th. I think we all know, I'm not telling anybody anything, the sign up for the vaccination is chaotic and awful, and the better tech savvy you are, the better chance you have of getting it. So whoever can't get appointments, get your kids to get them, and just keep refreshing, because they add appointments. There'll be 100 appointments available, and then 15 minutes later they're gone. So you just, you got to get that appointment. And if you can get an appointment for when you're going to be eligible, then all the better. One thing I will say, we've noticed in the hospital, it was rolled out quite a while ago, and over 91% of the physicians, both the regular doctors and the physicians in training, the residents, have taken the vaccine. And almost any of them that didn't, there are reasons for it related to medications or medical conditions, etc. But the doctors ran in full force to get the vaccination. Other groups have not, and the nurses, in fact, in our hospital, 60% have received it, but 40% have not, which seems to me to be shocking, considering how hard we were hit in the purge, and the nurses were frontline. And then among other groups, technicians, etc., it's even lower. And so if anybody in our shul is hesitant about the vaccine, there's many of us who are happy to talk you through it. I mean, we view it as the only solution to get us through this pandemic. And there's a lot of myths that circulate about it. And I'm not going to say nothing is 100% safe or 100% effective, but we in the medical community anyway, we think it's really our only chance. And in terms of side effects, etc., definitely, and again, many of you have had the vaccine already. It's like other vaccines. You get a sore arm. Maybe it's a little bit more sore than other vaccinations like the flu shot, but certainly the tetanus shot is often very painful. So it's nothing really out of the ordinary. And often people do get some headache, fatigue. The second dose seems to be worse, and it's especially worse for young people. Older people seem to tolerate it very well. And I will tell you, at least at Montefiore, we gave maybe 21,000 doses, and there were a handful of people who had what we would call severe reactions. None of them were turned out to be a problem, but people who, temporarily felt that they couldn't breathe, took an EpiPen, maybe it was like 9 patients. So it's really well tolerated and highly, highly recommended to get it. So that was all I wanted to update you on, and I don't know if there are specific questions related to those topics. Oh, so Richard asked about, Richard said, someone asked, is a company working on inactivated vaccine? Because we have no long-term studies on mRNA. So, that is true. We don't have long-term studies on mRNA vaccines. We do have vaccines that come in a vector, such as an adenovirus, a virus that our body doesn't react to strongly because it's used to it, like a cold virus. And the J&J the J&J vaccine that's about to be probably approved here, I don't know, but I'm assuming it will be, is one of those type. So the J&J and the AstraZeneca, these are not mRNA vaccines. And there is much more long-term data on adenovirus vaccines. To my knowledge, there isn't an actual inactivated COVID vaccine, virus vaccine that's close to being approved. And then someone asked about the neurological disorders. So, I'm on these doctors groups where there's a lot of discussion about Bell's palsy and whether if you've had Bell's palsy, as an example, are you at higher risk if you get vaccinated to get it again? No data. The AstraZeneca had been stopped a few times because of syndromes such as Guillain-Barré, transverse myelitis. What we think of as acute, I'll use just technical terms, acute demyelinating conditions, conditions where your nervous system loses its myelin in relation to a viral or a post-viral illness. And vaccines can cause that. Even the flu vaccine has sometimes caused that. Again, the AstraZeneca had some of that in their studies. To my knowledge, Moderna and Pfizer have not been reporting any of those side effects. And then yes, what Shauna wrote is what I wrote down. How should the vaccines change your behavior? It's a great question. As you see, there is absolutely no centralized information about this. We are waiting to be told if you have a vaccination, or do you get a vaccine passport, and can you travel, and can you sit with people without a mask? So I will tell you this, in the hospital, we have not changed our behavior at this point. Let's say in my department of neurologists who are all vaccinated, we have not changed our behavior a single bit so far. Nobody sits together and eats without their masks. The one change we actually did was we've reinstated pizza at our noon conferences for our residents because we feel they can be trusted to eat far away. But we are really, there is no clear, without the information about whether you can still carry the vaccine carry the virus asymptomatically while vaccinated, we can't really change our behavior. I'll tell you personally, in my own family, we haven't had one of my kids has not been inside my house. We've met outside this whole time, and because they're in a pod with the in-laws, and we're considering that when sufficient of us are vaccinated, maybe we'll all be in the house together, but I'm not sure we'll eat together. So that's just like a personal answer. We don't know. We just don't know. And the question about the quarantine, right now, none of the states have changed their quarantine recommendations in relation to vaccination. I think that we just haven't caught up, and that there's no way that we can continue to have this degree of restriction as more and more people get vaccinated. So I would guess that, as we get more percentage vaccinated, things will change. But look at Israel, right? I mean, everybody's talking about that here. The majority of the country is vaccinated at that point, and if anything, they're back in a lockdown and worse, right? So it's the vaccination is not yet the answer; it's our future answer. When we have enough people vaccinated, when the numbers are low enough, that in combination is going to give us our freedom back. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have that freedom now, even if you're vaccinated. And then someone asked about the if you're having antibodies, do you need to get the vaccine? So this is what I know. The antibodies that you get from natural COVID vaccine, natural COVID infection are not anti-spike protein antibody. They're technically something called anti-nucleocapsid antibody. And the vaccines give you anti-spike antibody. So just so you know, if you get the vaccine and then you go do a regular antibody test, it can come out negative because the regular antibody tests don't test against the spike protein. That's a specialized antibody test. What I would imagine is going to happen is when enough people are vaccinated, we will develop the spike protein antibody test on a more regular basis. People can make sure that they're immune after they get their vaccine, and we'll also know whether you need a booster in a year or et cetera. But for right now, don't get worried if you go ahead and get an antibody test after you're vaccinated and it's negative, because you need to do the specialized one. And the recommendation is that you should get the vaccine even if you just had COVID, because it's not the same immunity. What is Sheryl said? Yes, you do. You need. Oh yeah. Okay.
So Sheryl,
yes.
one question that somebody asked, it's Richard, one question somebody asked was, would taking Tylenol before getting the vaccine prophylactically help with possible side effects in mitigating some of the soreness?
I'm really glad you asked that. Don't take Tylenol or Motrin before the vaccine. That has been released as a recommendation from the medical societies. And apparently the pediatricians always knew this and the rest of us didn't, that if you pre-medicate, you reduce the immune response. So it's been very clear, and there's been quite a bit that has come out about this. Do not pre-medicate. However, you can take these antipyretics. You could take Tylenol and NSAIDs, which is ibuprofen, Motrin, etc., after the vaccine. I would say, and again, it's just one more area that we don't have clear and fast rules. Most of us who I know who got the vaccine held off taking anything for at least 4 hours, and that's the time frame that I keep seeing discussed on the physician boards. Again, without 100% data, but you want to know that your body is given the initial ability to mount the immune response without decreasing it. So I would recommend that don't take anything for the first 4 hours after the vaccine, and after that, it's pretty clear that you can take Tylenol or Motrin, etc. My own experience with the vaccine is the first dose I was a little off, but nothing major, and then the second dose I did get low-grade fever and very bad body aches for a day, and then when I took the Tylenol or the Aleve, it went away. Also, don't assume if you do get fever after the vaccine that it's directly related to the vaccine. You might have to get tested for COVID. If it goes away in a day, then fine. But if you are persistently sick, go get tested for COVID, because sometimes, and we don't know exactly why, people who are asymptomatic with COVID, when they get the vaccine, suddenly get symptomatic and test positive. And they're not testing positive from the vaccine. They're just they're just positive. Somebody said, answer my question about having 3 times antibodies. Can I have 1 shot instead of 2? I don't know. I'm not an immunologist. Like I just don't want to give an answer to that. I don't know the answer. I think those are the only questions that related to what I said. Oh, someone says, can you clarify if someone is under 65 and has diabetes, can they register now or must they wait to register? I said this to Rev. Stephen on the phone the other day. It's so clear, if we were in a perfect world, I think we should all follow the rules very, very, to the nth degree. This is not perfect, and it's not our fault, but it is a totally chaotic system. So I say, if I'm not saying to go and get it before you can, and probably they're being strict right now and you can't do that, but if you can get the appointment, I know you have to then say that here's the problem. When you sign up for the appointment, they ask you to attest that you qualify under phase 1A or 1B. And if you're under 65 and you have diabetes, then you're in phase 2A. You're not in the first two phases. So you technically should not sign up for an appointment after February 15th now. But I don't know. I just worry that February 15th will come and it's going to be impossible to get appointments again. So, I'm just saying to you, I think having, as long as you know that the day you walk in for your appointment, you qualify, I can't see how that shouldn't work. But don't quote me. I'm going, that's not the absolute rule. Oh, and then someone asked about the time window. Okay, so the time window is the studies tested the way they tested, and that's how the drugs were approved. They even in the studies, they allowed a window that's wider than the 3 weeks for Pfizer and the 4 weeks for Moderna. So for Moderna, you can get it, let's say 5 days earlier and up to a week later. And the same with Pfizer. With Pfizer, they don't want you to get it more than a day earlier, actually, but you can get it later. So what if you can't get it on those, on that day? Well, look at the UK. They're only giving the first dose. I spoke to doctors in the UK, and they said that they're hoping that they're going to get their second dose at the 3-month date, if there's enough medicine. So clearly, they're banking on the fact that you get a decent amount of immunity from the first dose. Don't know the answer. I wouldn't stress about it. I would say try not to delay more than a week, but I really wouldn't stress about it. And even if it's 2 weeks later, it's very likely to be fine. And somebody said, which vaccine has more side effects? According to what we know, they both have the same. And someone else said about the demyelination and MS. So that's a tougher one. And you have to talk to your, if there's a specific medical issue for yourself, then you have to talk to your own treating physician about that. And someone says people with many allergies, so the people who have had anaphylaxis, definitely you have to take an EpiPen, and you should talk to your, your allergist or your medical doctor about it. So, please don't take anything I'm saying here as it's like, a podcast, right? They always say, this is not, specific medical advice for you. This is general advice. But, if you have specific medical issues, you must discuss it with your practitioners. But in general, in most cases, people, the recommendations are that COVID itself is so risky and dangerous that you want to get vaccinated, but there are some people who need to take very high precautions. And also the site that you get it matters, because they're giving it all over the place, right? And if you do have the potential to have a reaction, and this has come up in some discussions I've had, do you want to be getting it in a setting that has a lot of medical personnel versus, I know people who are getting it in just a community hall or a church or something like that. You should be a little bit mindful about that if you have some risk to get an anaphylactic reaction or some very, very severe allergy. So somebody pointed out to me that I agree with this, like, what I said about signing up and all of that, if you're not yet in the 65, I mean, it's not, I shouldn't be recommending to you to do anything that's not legal. So so we all are very worried that people who are eligible, I mean, we know it. We know people. I have a friend who's 85-year-old mother in New Rochelle has still not managed to get an appointment. I mean, we just know that it's a mess. Someone said news is saying virus can last 7 more years with the shot. What can be done? Well, so I think that there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, because there's so many different vaccines that are coming out worldwide. And remember, we are, what happens here to us is not just us. What happens in other countries impacts us and vice versa. So we really need to be past this. We need the whole world to be, vaccinated pretty much. And that looks like there'll be a good chance that it's happening. And the most important thing is that once we have vaccines, you can, and you've heard this, you can you can update the vaccines just like they do with the flu vaccine, because there are different strains of the flu that come out. And so every year, the people in the Northern Hemisphere look to see what flu was most prevalent in the Southern Hemisphere and adjust the vaccines for that. And it is very likely that unless COVID goes away completely, like SARS did, we will be getting boosters with updated, vaccines for different strains. And hopefully, again, once the system is in place, it won't be such a big deal to get the boosters. So I think that I really think there's reason to be optimistic that life will return to normal. This has not changed, the world forever, but we're getting in gear. And let's face it, we've got a vaccine way faster than any other infectious disease, has managed to get. And it's not soon enough for all of us now that we're coming on to a year, but we are so much better off than we were a year ago, even if it doesn't feel that way on a day-to-day basis yet. I think that's it.
Thank you so much. I had said to Sheryl and to others, we'll spend about 10 minutes on the medical update, and then we'll touch on some other things. But just seeing all the questions and looking at your faces, I know how important it is to have the opportunity to talk to someone who we trust, who's day in and day out really immersed in medical care and the medical community and been involved in COVID broadly in so many ways. I want to thank you, Sheryl, Dr. Haut, and thank everyone for posting their questions and posing their questions. It helps us all to get a chance to hear these questions and answers, and just to be able to provide a space for access to a professional, a compassionate and knowledgeable professional. So thank you. And I'll just, by way of transition, remind us kind of 2 thoughts about how this has impacted the Bayit on our day-to-day tefillah, which is our primary in-person activity right now, which is, of course, to reiterate that we really have felt and continue to feel that the setup that we have at Shul for tefillah is as low risk a setup as pretty much any in-person activity that you can be a part of in this time. I mean, if you want to get out of the house and go somewhere that's as low risk as you can, come to Shul for tefillah. It really is a place of spiritual connection, social connection, just by sharing the space with each other, communal connection. And it's a place which is set up with so many protocols and precautions, and we've been blessed to really have so much compliance. So, it's been over this year, you've received only 3 emails that mention that someone has tested positive, and each of those have been not a case of transmission within shul. So just a reminder to all of us that we it continues to make a difference, that we keep our protocols in place and we comply with those protocols. And we really believe that as each of us in our own ways is getting out more and trying to connect more, that shul is a place that you can, and we really encourage and invite you to do that. And in keeping with that, and in talking with our medical advisory committee, because of the numbers in the Bronx and in parts of our adjacent neighborhoods, anecdotal uptick of cases that we're aware of, and because of our wanting to take an abundance of caution with that which we don't know yet about these new variants, we took the option to put a couple of additional protocols in place that we hope will not be onerous in any way, and but that will enable us to be extra safe and secure. And those are, as you've seen on email, a little bit of a reduction in the number of people attending our indoor tefillot, which has allowed us to do a little bit of extra distancing in our indoor spaces in the main sanctuary and in the social hall, as well as for indoor tefillah, that more cautious masking recommendations. The current, and it's tweaked even a little bit from our last email, the current is that for indoor tefillah, we are providing for those who need and asking that everyone who comes wears KN95, also can be an N95, but a KN95 mask or a 2-ply mask with a filter in between. Not all of us have those masks at home. Many of us have been wearing 2 or 3-ply cloth masks out and about. You heard Dr. Haut's recommendation about what we do when we're out and about or indoors with others when we need to be, about a more cautious masking approach, and we're adopting that for this, what I hope again will be a short-term period in the shul, and making those masks available. So when you come, if you come to shul with a regular 2 or 3-ply cloth mask, we'll have for you a KN95, or by next Shabbat, a 2-ply with filter in between mask that are approved, and you can feel free to bring your own with you, so you don't need to change, but you can get those at shul and switch in a quiet, distant spot, so that you have those for in-person tefillah. So those are the 2 small tweaks that we've made. And I also want to emphasize, our hope is that with those additional caps, that our attendance in tefillah will not go down in any way, shape, or form. This is, God forbid, not a discouragement from being in person at tefillah. And if we see that we are not able to accommodate everyone with our existing tefillot, we'll add an additional tefillah. So don't stay away. We want to see you. It's just a segue in terms of how the medical realities and our medical advisory committee's hard work is impacting the current state of in-person tefillah at shul. We will put out a reminder again, as Dr. Haut said, just a little over a week away, another group will be eligible for vaccination. So we'll put out a reminder about how, if you're having difficulty through yourself or your own networks getting an appointment, how you can access our vaccine volunteer pool to help you make those appointments. Again, the general advice to go on the various websites, keep refreshing, keep checking. But if you're having difficulty, we have a team of now truly experts, tested by experience, who are available to help. A few notes about Purim, since it's coming up. And again, because there is, all things being equal, a power, a meaning, and even a benefit halachically to being able to hear the Megillah in person. So we just want to remind everyone that we will have as many Megillah readings as we need. For those who wish to come in person, we'll have all of our in-person caps and our masking guidelines will be in place. But anyone who wishes to attend in person and hear Megillah readings both at night and in the daytime, we will have ample in-person options. We'll start those signups this coming weekend at Rosh Chodesh Adar, so that we'll ask everyone to sign up as early as you can, so that we can get ahead of seeing whether we need to open more Megillah reading slots. Every Megillah reading, we hope to have outdoor and indoor options that will all be posted and available next weekend. And every reading will also be Zoomed, so that if you're not able to attend in person, you'll be able to hear the Megillah over Zoom at a whole variety of times, hopefully one that will be convenient for you. So that information will be out soon, and please do sign up if you're attending in person, and there'll be many opportunities to hear the Megillah over Zoom. For those who have their own Megillah at home, if you're not attending in person, in fact, there's also a benefit halachically if you are attending in person, but if you have your own Megillah at home, from a halachic perspective, it's terrific and even ideal to follow along, and even in an undertone, follow along and recite aloud with the Megillah reader. That really enhances the performance of the mitzvah. But again, it's a complete halachic fulfillment of the mitzvah just to follow along, even over Zoom, with the Megillah readers who will be reading for us. We're also aware that Shabbat Zachor is coming up in a little while. That's also a time when, in non-pandemic times, the shul is full. We'll have readings at all of our Shabbat morning tefillot, and an additional reading right before Mincha. If you're not able, since of course we can't Zoom on Shabbat, if you're not able to hear Parashat Zachor in person, you have a couple of alternative options. You can read it from a chumash from home, even if you don't know the melody, that's all right. You fulfill the mitzvah on Shabbat Zachor, reading the Megillah, reading the reading of Parashat Zachor, that special reading from a chumash from home. And there is also an opportunity zooming into our Purim morning Zoom Shacharit tefillot. Hearing the Torah reading of Purim is also a way to fulfill the mitzvah of Zachor. So you have a whole host of ways to be sure you fulfill that mitzvah as Purim approaches. A note about Mishloach Manot: the shul has a wonderful Mishloach Manot opportunity that you can sign up for online this year. Last year, as the pandemic was just beginning, we had put a lot of thought and put some very restrictive guidelines around Mishloach Manot. With what we understand now, we're not putting as restrictive a set of instructions to the Bayit community around Mishloach Manot. Feel free to use the shul system. If you wish to share Mishloach Manot with others, just please be sure to do it in a COVID-safe way, that as you prepare the food, you do so with all hygienic guidelines as we would normally do. And if you're going to be delivering to others, just to do it in a COVID-conscious and safe way. We don't need to be in each other's homes to share Mishloach Manot with one another. So just that thought of applying our general cautiousness, thoughtfulness, but this can be a way just to reach out and connect in our own little chevra in our building. We've lately been, since we can't get together for Shabbat meals, each cooking a little something special to share with each other and dropping off at each other's front doors, a little pre-Purim Mishloach Manot type of approach. And this is yet just another way that we can feel the presence of each other and connect without some of the indoor in-person things that we're not doing these days. Just one drop looking further ahead to Pesach is just to let everybody know, last year, Pesach came upon us really in the thick of the hardest times of the pandemic. And we realized at that time, as we were encouraging people really not even to go out of their homes except for absolute essentials, that we needed to mount a major community response. I'm looking right at Richard, who really set this up with wonderful support for the entire community, to make it possible for all of us, not just those we might classify as needy in one way or another, but to make it possible for all of us to get catered food for Pesach through a central address that was coordinated by the Bayit and our partners. This year, we will still, in anticipation of Pesach, for those who really are in need, have an opportunity for you to purchase catered food for Pesach, but we're not doing as expansive, sort of a community-wide arrangement as possible. And so just a reminder, looking ahead, to think and be planful in advance of Pesach. We really don't want to spend extensive amounts of time in the grocery stores, so try to plan already in advance your Pesach, Instacart and other food ordering. If you need to reach out to caterers, we have had now a year to get ready for this and kind of plan and organize the way our caterers are working. So just a drop of encouragement to look ahead, think ahead, plan your Pesach food shopping and arrangements in advance. But again, for anyone for whom it's a financial hardship or otherwise a hardship to arrange basic Seder meals, Yom Tov meals, reach out to us and stay tuned for further online information about how we can make that possible. Our Open Seder won't be taking place again this year, but we'll make sure that those who've typically benefited from it will be able to do so again by food getting to them, and sponsorship opportunities will be available for that as well. I also neglected to mention on Purim night, in addition to Megillah reading, we have a wonderful comedian, Ali Leibowitz, over Zoom. So it'll just be a great chance. We'd love to see as many of your faces as possible, just to see each other and to laugh together, and have some opportunities for celebration, connection, and joyfulness in what has continued to be such a challenging time. We want Purim to be as joyful, as fun, as happy a holiday as it can be. And we're excited to have a comedian Purim night help us experience that a little bit more. I want to mention a couple final things. I think Eileen's question about on-site and off-site. If that was a question about Megillah reading, all the Megillah readings that the Bayit is coordinating will be on-site. It's not a Rosh Hashanah type of arrangement where we have a satellite set, but again, there should be ample indoor and outdoor options, but they will all be taking place. Those that are coordinated by the Bayit will all be taking place at the Bayit. One note that I wanted to share, just really a reminder, and I want to say it where you can sort of really see me and hear me. We had a wonderful community response early on in the pandemic to our COVID relief fund, and we still have funds available there. And I want to emphasize to everyone not to feel embarrassed to reach out. Every person who's reached out for help from a wide variety of categories of need, the first thing I say to them is thank you. The fact that you let us know that we can help means the world to us. The community support is there to help people who are going through any kind of financial change, strain, or challenge. You don't have to think of yourself as in the neediest category. If you're dipping into your savings in a way that you had not planned for or expected to make ends meet at this time, the COVID Relief Fund is there for you. We have financial support available. So please don't think of it as something to be embarrassed or uncomfortable about. Reach out. We don't ask for a lot of detail. You can reach out to any member of our clergy team. You can reach out really to any member of the Bayit staff or lay leadership that would be most comfortable for you to connect to let us know in broad strokes what's going on and how we can help, and we can help. I really wanted to take the opportunity with so many of us together to make that point. And also, as I see Nancy and Rav Moshe, to thank them for their wonderful Pushka campaign, which has helped bring in small bits, something that's added up to really a tremendous amount of tzedakah that we've been able to disperse. So keep filling up your pushkas, and they're available to pick them up. I see Rav Moshe motioning. You can unmute for a second and tell me what you want to say so we can hear you. You should be able to unmute if you want, just to tell us what we need to know.
Oh, there, go ahead.
I'll be at the synagogue tomorrow at the Bayit from 9 o'clock till 10:30. And anybody who has a tzedakah pushka, they can bring it, just drop it off right in the front lobby where I'll be there. And we'll count it up and we'll add the money in. So tomorrow between 9 and 10:30, come by with your pushka.
Or email us at pushka@thebayit.org and we will pick it up.
Terrific. Thank you. We're just approaching 9 p.m. So just a last reminder that the daily email and the shul bulletin really continue to be wonderful ways to get a sense of what's going on. We continue every day to offer opportunities to learn, and on a weekly basis, a process space, all kinds of different learning opportunities, connection opportunities. Our Nigun Circle with Rabbanit Bracha on Thursday nights is a wonderful opportunity to sing together and connect with one another. I want to encourage everyone who can to join us on Motzei Shabbatot on Saturday nights for Havdalah and story time, not just because Ilan read a story this past Saturday night, but because we actually choose stories that, while of course they're children's stories, they have something to offer children of all ages, and just a wonderful connection space. So please know that we're here in every way that we can be, with all kinds of programming, all kinds of ways to connect. And I want to end as I began, thanking our incredible pool of volunteers. One thing that, as God willing, the pandemic starts to subside, as we have more and more vaccination, and we think about bringing forward more ways to connect, and more in-person ways to connect safely, that we we not lose that spirit of volunteerism. There are always ways to reach out, connect, and be a part. So be a part together. So thank you to all of our volunteers. Reminder that we have 2 wonderful Saturday night programs. We have every Motzei Shabbat, we have Havdalah soon after Shabbat ends, and then at 8 p.m., some type of learning or connecting opportunity. Next Saturday night will be our second dance party. That was a lot of fun the first time. So just join us to put on your screen and dance. And then the following, as we've continued to try to be a good resource for information about civic responsibility and opportunity, we have a sort of webinar presentation, informative presentation about ranked choice voting, which is our new system for a variety of our New York City elections. So come learn about that there. And since it was Mevarchim HaChodesh Adar, it seems like the right time, by popular request, to end with a melody. Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. As the coming week brings in Adar, I certainly feel seeing your faces so much simcha. So feel free to, from your spots, join with me. Misha, 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 Nichnas Adar. Misha, 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 Nichnas Adar. Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. Misha Nichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Hi la 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 la. Hi la 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 la. La 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 la. Shavua Tov and love to all. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again to Dr. Haut, to Sheryl for your presentation, to our entire team, and to each of you. A wonderful, wonderful week. Shavua Tov. Feel free to unmute. You can just say goodbye if you wish. Everyone should be able to unmute who wants to. Take care, all.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov to all. Wonderful to see your faces.
Thank you.
Each of you has been
Thank you
different
for
in
the
time.
information, Rabbi.
Absolutely. Each of you has been so special in this time, as always. So thank you for being
Thank
here.
you for everything. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
all.
you for
Shavua
sharing
Tov.
the information.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Appreciate it.
Shavua Tov.
Thank
When are
you.
you coming back?